So talk a little about what's going on in the story in this World of Warcraft. You guys released a new cinematic here. Saurfang being led out to join the Alliance in a temporary alliance, I guess. Are orcs going to be Alliance now?
No, no. Lost Honor is the latest cinematic that we've released, and it's an ongoing narrative. And really, what we want to do is tell the side of the Horde that we think a lot of the players that resonates with a lot of our player base. And at the same time, advance this storyline of ongoing conflict. Who is the enemy? Who is the bad guy? And who does the Alliance perceive that way? And who does the Horde perceive that way? And kind of roll that out into something that hopefully, I think, when all is said and done, when we're kind of done with this storyline and this story arc, Sylvanas supporters and the loyalists of the old Horde will both be satisfied in some fashion. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But I feel pretty good about it.
This has been the first expansion since the release of WoW that's brought back that Horde versus Alliance mentality, because there's always been that conflict, but it's always been a common enemy. Arthas, Illidan, the Warlords. It's always been them. We have to merge Legion. We have to merge together and look behind our differences to fight a common enemy. Now it's the true war. It's Alliance versus Horde all over again. What does it open up for you guys from a gameplay perspective?
Well, it allows us to fulfill that fantasy, right? At its core, Warcraft is red versus blue. It's Alliance versus Horde.
Right.
And we've scratched at it here and there from expansion to expansion and battleground to battleground and, world PvP here and there, but we've never really fully endorsed it. It's like, this is the mode that we really want to make sure that there is that animosity built in and that you're out there and you're fighting for a purpose or for a reason. And so I think that's what we're getting out of this thing. But on the other end of this, there's always going to be a big bad. Because I think the story of Warcraft is, well, yes, we have our differences, and we are going to fight from time to time. It's something that resonates, I think, with humanity, in that we have to put our differences aside to fight for a common good. And our common good is, we often talk about it as home, right? We talk about Azeroth as being kind of our second home for a lot of the players of World of Warcraft. It really is, and it is for me, and I feel like it is for millions of people. And there is that rigorous defense of the thing that we hold most dear. And I think that's, again, another human trait. And I think we'll always fight against that common enemy before we fight between ourselves. And I think that's always one of those important lessons to learn or to remind our players of.
One of my favorite modes in the game currently is your War Fronts. I love that mode. I can't get enough of it. What have you guys learned since launching that mode that you've improved upon or plan to make improvements on in the future?
Sure. I mean, originally when we launched it, it was meant to, and I think successfully, fulfilled that Warcraft 3 fantasy of base building. Like, hey, we want to build up your base, get your lumber mill going, get your mine going, really see the base come together and have some like siege weapons and really take it to the other side. That was awesome for Arathi. Now with our Battle for Darkshore Warfront, we want to take it to the next level. Like, what can we do with this technology to make it be more of a vehicle for storytelling, right? Like that is the next evolution of what a Warfront is. Like, base building, we feel good about that. Let's talk about what happens after the burning of Teldrassil and the Night Elves try to take back their land.
You guys think you'll ever add a PvP aspect to that mode at all?
That sounds awesome. I don't think we have any plans for that right now, but
Anything's possible.
Anything is possible.
It's true.
yeah, if people want it, if it makes sense, then we'll absolutely talk about it.
What are some of the challenges for you creatively from a design standpoint when working within a game that's essentially 14 years old? In fact, I'm personally really impressed how much you've been able to get out of that engine and those physics and that code for a game being so old, and it's still fun to play, which is amazing to me. I mean, think about other games that are that old. Like, are they still as fun to play? Maybe in short increments, I play Mario Brothers. Oh, this was fun for an hour. Now I'm bored. But not with your guys' game. What are some of the challenges when working within those constraints to come up with new mechanics, new ideas, new things like Warfront, stuff like that?
From the technology side, which I can probably speak to a little bit here, is we're constantly reinventing, right? Like, if we stay stagnant, we would still be living in 2004 world where a realm is a realm and you can't get into instances and it's just not a great experience. As new technology and new techniques come online, we take advantage of them, and now we're able to do amazing things. Like in Tides of Vengeance, we actually have multi-threaded our renderer now, which is a pretty big deal for us. We're seeing performance improvements on some hardware that can really take advantage of the tech of up to 50% in frame rate. it's things like that that really allow us to keep our technology modern and drive it forward. The WoW of today, from a tech standpoint, looks nothing like the WoW did in 2004. So in many ways, it's quite a modern game. So it doesn't feel old from a tech standpoint. I think part of the challenge that you elicit is, there's this giant world of quests and lore and systems that, we have to be very careful not to break. There's a lot of people that want to go back and experience what life was like then, and we want to support that and foster that. So we're pretty careful with how we develop systems to preserve that, like that beauty, but also keep innovating to make sure we stay modern.
And I think from a creative side, it's really interesting. I think I've always said this, I've said this in previous interviews as well, which is with the tools that we have at our disposal, we can kind of do anything. Now, the question is always, should we do this? Designers aren't really good at answering the should we question. They just want to do it. And that's where Pat and his group comes in.
Out.
And engineering is awesome, and they're amazing, and they help make this thing that is super inefficient or will hammer the client or whatever it might be to actually work if we're really pushing for something out there or kind of cool. So it's really a fun game to actually just work on.
Do you guys ever do the ground overlays for magic abilities and ranged attacks eventually, just to help the player see how far their range is or how far their spell goes?
Oh, you mean pre-targeting,
Yes.
previs? We've done that in the past. I think for example, if you're casting a blizzard or rain of fire or something like that, you'll see the reticle.
But like for Cone of Cold or like that kind of stuff.
Right, and I think it's almost a philosophical discussion. It's not that we couldn't have the technology to do that. In fact, I think we could. I think it's how much interface do you want to get into the world? Because after all, we are an RPG.
It's already really busy.
It's very busy already, and we really want to make sure that you're immersed in this world and that you're paying attention to the things around you. So whenever we make UI decisions like that, we're really careful to, is it absolutely necessary? Are people missing their cone abilities because they don't have an interface to help them? And what we tend to find is generally not. There's enough slush, for example, in a cone that you're gonna hit, your target as long as you're facing them. So where we feel like the gameplay will massively improve, or where the gameplay it actually detracts from the gameplay, we'll totally do it. But we always want to be really careful what we choose to add as a UI element in the world.
What are some of the challenges when, and I've asked this before in multiple interviews, when you have hybrid classes like druids and paladins that can heal, tank, and do DPS? Like, how do they compare to something like a warlock or like a warrior, somebody who can't heal, Well,
I think every class is meant to have its own identity, right? Like it's meant to feel unique and special for the player. There's different roles you can choose in that, but it's meant to be themed, not like exclusive, really. It's more meant to be, I'm a mage, right? I want to live out the fantasy of a mage. Mages don't really heal or tank, right? But we can harness the power of the arcane, or just harness the elements of frost or fire, and living that out is, I think, what we shoot for.
I agree. I think to me it's about fun and playstyle, and I think it's hard to get into a mode, or it's dangerous potentially to get into a mode where there's a single best of anything. And because then, of course, meta changes, and it changes to that. And then if you're playing something else that's not part of the meta, you're not wanted or welcome. And that's a constant struggle for us too, because, meta can change, but mostly as a result of sentiment and not based off of, well, this class is actually ineffective. They're totally effective, but they're 0.2% less effective. And so it's constantly, it's a constant, battle, as it were, to make sure that our classes are being serviced and that they're fun, that they fit that fantasy mold that you're kind of chasing, and that they're effective at what they do.
I remember that back in the day, now it's all about, what's your item level, which is a lot more simple than, hey, link me your talent build from Burning Crusade, and if you were built wrong, sorry, you can't be in this raid, you can't be in this PvP party. Those were the days, man. Not fondly remembered, but fondly remembered at the same time. So, Horde or Alliance?
Both, actually.
Okay.
I'll take the fifth. No, I do play both as well. I'm trying to push a little harder on the Alliance side this go around. But, I'll tell you what, before the game goes live, I've probably played both sides 15 times.
People forget that in Warcraft 3, the Alliance did some pretty crummy stuff. Now it's the Horde's turn to do that crummy stuff. But, okay, now, how many turtles have you saved?
Well, let's see. We talked about in the What's Next panel, how many turtles were saved?
What was the stat?
12.6 million?
I thought it was way higher than that.
What? Or 160 million? I don't remember.
That was like 900 billion or something. That's just I'm not a mathematician though, so let's be clear.
I've saved about 10 million myself.
Yeah.
10 million turtles saved to date.
Yeah.
You guys, when does the Tide of Vengeance come out? When can we look forward to playing it officially on the Blizzard launcher?
For the U.S., it comes out on December 11th. For Europe, it's the 12th, and for the Asian regions, it's the 13th of December.